Okay. All right, we're live. Okay. So we're here to talk about the Keystone XL Trans Canada stuff.
Great.
We've been following the Dakota pipeline, then the spill from last year that happened after the pipeline fiasco. So we're just trying to provide continuous coverage, I guess, like real journalists or real concerned citizens are. So you said you did some research and you had something you want to share.
Yeah, actually, I did do some research because, you and I have talked about this at length. And according to Enbridge themselves, um, there were 804 spills between 1999 and 2010, which resulted in over 161,000 barrels of crude oil. And so then I played around with the math, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm fine with that. But according to what I was best able to estimate, that's almost 7 million gallons of oil.
Oh, yeah. Hold on one second.
Okay. You got
no, because I meant to do this before. I meant to. So they said this is 1 gallon.
Yeah.
So if there's, what did they say? 800,000?
There's 5,000 barrels equals about 210,000 gallons.
Yeah, 200. So 210,000 of these fill with oil. Just for the viewers, if they can imagine, that's how much oil was spilled. So keep this in sight so people.
Yeah, so imagine the total of their spills just in between 99 and 2010, almost 7 million gallons of oil going into our waterways, going into our land, farmland, communities. So in just in 13, they had spills in North Ore Creek, in Cheatham, Alberta, 750 barrels. In Illinois, 905 barrels in 2012. Grand Marsh, Michigan, Wisconsin. Sorry, it's been a long day, and I think I'm on a different time zone. Are we on the same time zone?
I'm Eastern.
Okay, so, all right, we're on the same time zone. Maybe in my mind, I'm still on West Coast time.
Probably.
Anyway, Wisconsin, 1,200 barrels in Grand Marsh, Wisconsin. 7,500 barrels in Romeoville, Illinois in 2010. Also, Marshall, Michigan, 27,000. Deer River, Minnesota. Verdun, Manitoba, 9.5 thousand. 3,784 in North Dakota. Only 2,237 of those were recovered. So that means they walked away and said, oh, that's good enough. That's good enough. We got this cleaned up. That's good enough. And 4,000 barrels in Fort McMurray in January 2009. And in 2009, the Enbridge Energy Partners, which is another one of their business entities, I just think of them as shell corporations because they're all hiding behind it's the same game master, right? They settled with the state of Wisconsin for $1.1 million for, get this, 545 environmental violations just in Wisconsin. So in Minnesota, they had a pipeline explosion and 2 of their employees were killed. And that was in 2007.
Now, how much did that cost to pay for the families?
I don't know. That information was not readily available for me. But again, I encourage people to look these things up for themselves. I don't want people to take my word for anything. I'm just as good a researcher as anybody else. But again,
can you give a brief 30 seconds? So I forgot for you to properly introduce yourself. It's been a while since we smoked.
Of course, I'm sorry. So my name is Renee Roman Nose. I am Cheyenne from Oklahoma, where we were invited at gunpoint to live. And today happens to be the anniversary of the Sand Creek Massacre, November 29th, 1864, of which I am a descendant of the survivors, myself, my family members. So happy to be here, happy to still be alive, and happy that my people are still here. And as Native people, we're given the role of caretakers of the land. So this land that we all live on, that we all enjoy, it's a responsibility to all of us. Everyone who lives on this land now is responsible for it. I would not come into your house and throw food on the floor. I wouldn't, empty my gas tank in your driveway. So that's what these companies are doing. They're coming into our homes. They're making it so tap water is flammable. People can't drink the tap water coming out of their sinks because of fracking. Mm-hmm. So all of these issues center around one thing, and that's oil. It's oil and natural gas. So those companies that are pushing non-renewable resources, of which oil and natural gas are non-renewable resources, they're also destroying the environment, and they're being helped hand in hand by 45. So I've made a promise to myself to try not to use his name anymore.
Mm-hmm. I hear that often from people.
Right? Well, I just decided to do it. I heard somebody say, he who shall not be named. And then I went, oh, she's talking about 45. And so then I went, oh, I should just call him 45. Because he's like a loaded 45 pointed at each of us and about to go off. And, not just talking about North Korea and his ongoing shenanigans there that could get a substantial portion of our country killed. So his desire to further his family's interests put him in the White House, thanks to Russia. And I firmly believe that. I could be wrong, but I haven't seen any facts to prove otherwise. And all of America's intelligence agencies affirm that Russia interfered with our election process. So in my mind, that means you hold a new election. You say, game over, we're starting over, we're going to have a new election. And until then, we have an interim president, which would be our crazy vice president.
Oh, okay.
I know. And the food chain on down is just worse, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Paul Ryan actively sought to squash the Violence Against Women Amendment Act. Now, what about that? You would think is bad. Why would anybody say, oh, we shouldn't pass a Violence Against Women Amendment Act? We shouldn't fund this. Paul Ryan said that. The reason he said that is because he said that white Americans would not get justice in Native courts. Well, newsflash, our courts are the same courts that you guys got. Everybody else has the same courts. We have the same judges. A lot of mainstream judges moonlight on our reservations in our tribal courts. So, and a lot of the attorneys who come and practice on our reservations are from mainstream America. And last time I checked, you and I did not get fair and legal representation in the mainstream courts.
No.
We know that. When
what is that picture behind you? I'm sorry, it's very intriguing. It's okay. So, I love it.
Okay, so I'm gonna move my head so you see the whole thing.
Okay,
so that has to do with the Oneida creation story. So in our dining room here are the 4 paint. Actually, I'll take you around. So save yourself because it's gonna jiggle.
Okay, we're gonna be going all over the place. We're gonna get back to the pipeline. So if anyone's watching, just stay patient.
So right there is where Sky Woman fell from the sky. And she fell on, well, I can't tell you the whole story because it's not my story to tell. But here's where Sky Woman nourished the earth.
Damn.
Yeah, so from her body grew the 3 sisters, corn, beans, and squash. And from her head grew tobacco, which is our sacred one of our sacred medicines. It's supposed to be used, tobacco is supposed to be used for prayer, for healing.
Like ceremonial purposes,
exactly. Right? It's not supposed to be used for casual use. And that's something my grandfather told me repeatedly. He was addicted to smoking. And he told me again and again, granddaughter, do not take tobacco in a non-ceremonial way. So over here, she gave birth to 2 sons. And then here they are fighting for the world. And this is, they're fighting to decide who's going to rule the earth. So this was not who's evil and who's good. This is how are we going to rule. And then, so then the creator rules the morning, and Flint rules the afternoon and night. So they split up the day. So you can, oops, can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Okay, there we go. So apologize for the
it looks like a number 8 almost, and 8 is like, represents infinity.
Yeah, that's really fascinating that you say this. It's a beautiful rendition of this particular artwork. And I don't have my glasses on, so I cannot read the name of the artist. But anyways, that's the Oneida creation story. So thanks for letting me share that. Close your eyes while I spin you around.
Okay.
All right. So thanks for asking about that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm going to share some of my research I found with the from the Economist website, which is a great website. I think eventually you have to pay. But there are a lot of things I want to talk about, or several things I want to talk about. The first one is that the people who voted for it, because it still hasn't been decided yet. I think they said at the end of the article it's going to be in December.
Yes.
So, but they said to get it to where it got to, basically, the Democrats outvoted the Republicans from 4-1. 4 Democrats voted, 1 Republican voted. And with this channel, like I promote independent, free thinking, because especially in minority communities, we tend to think that Democrats have our best interests and we're supposed to just vote for them without, any accountability. And I'm not saying this to say they're any better or worse than Republicans. I'm just saying I like us to get away from that bias thinking. And the fact that they would support this even more than the Republicans, which this, Trump supporting it, it's a money issue. It's not a social issue that you normally see Republicans supporting. I mean, not supporting. They generally support these issues. So the fact that the Republicans got outvoted, I think, is alarming.
It's very encouraging.
And okay, so the Public Service Commission approved the Keystone XL, but not the Trans-Canada route. They said the route that's further east.
Mm-hmm.
And the other great point I want to talk about, because you talked about this before, is that he's a Republican, Nebraska senator, he said that the renewable energy is too costly and unreliable to replace fossil fuels. Because I think you were saying like clean energy, green energy. So do you agree with that, or do you think it's too? Because when we say costly, is it how much you have to really get into how much our lives are worth?
Yeah, you and really do. Thank you.
And not just Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You bring up an excellent point. What are our lives worth? What are the lives of our children worth? Because that's really what we're talking about. In our Native communities, we say that we make decisions for 7 generations to come. That's our belief system. You don't make it for you and I right here, right now. Oh, hey, this is a great idea. Let's throw this pipeline through here because we really need this. We need to send this oil to China. Because that's what Keystone XL is going to do. It's going to send oil from the tar sands of Canada all the way down to Texas and send it off to China, right? So that doesn't benefit the United States whatsoever, other than maybe a few landowners. Most landowners not, because they're using eminent domain. And I don't understand how you can use eminent domain for a foreign country, right? That's just baffling to me and to a lot of farmers in Nebraska. So in terms of renewable energy being too expensive, driving a car is a privilege. It's not a right. It's a privilege. We have to go through certain testing to do it. We have to learn how to drive. We have to prove we know how to drive. We have to prove how old we are. My nephew was trying to get his driver's license here in New York. And because of 9/11, it's extremely difficult to get a license in the New York State now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so you have to have your social security card. You have to have your passport if you have one, your previous driver's license. If you don't have a previous driver's license, there's 6 things that you have to have. And so your birth certificate, on and on and on. And that's okay, right? That's cool. But each time he went in, he was asked for his papers. And he's like, I don't have any papers. I'm from Oklahoma. And here's this big, tall, strapping, brown Cheyenne man trying to get a license and being told he needs his papers. And I realize I'm digressing a little bit, but it comes back to driving being a privilege. So not only are we as Indigenous people subjected to racism in our own country, from something as simple as trying to get a driver's license and having to prove that we're not illegal aliens. And I really think that other people need to prove they're not illegal aliens, or that their people came here legally, instead of telling us that we have to prove, that we're Indigenous. Native people are the only ones in America that have to carry cards to prove what color we are, who we belong to. So each one of us who belongs to a federally recognized tribe carries an ID card. And I don't know if you knew that. And it's to prove some people joke about, oh, it's my Indian card. Or up here they call it the red card because their cards are red.
I'm sorry, but has someone said, well, you're trying to play the race card? Did they try a joke like that about that?
No, they probably better not.
Okay.
They probably better not.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, so driving was a privilege. And if you understand that it's a privilege and not a right, then you also understand it's a responsibility, right? So do you take public transportation? If it was possible out here, we live in a remote area, so there's no public transportation for miles. And that would be a much better solution, especially in the wintertime, right? Anyways, to get back to renewable energy, we actually live on a good walk, really hard walk, walking distance of several windmills. And each ridge of hills in Oneida Territory, they have these windmills all over. They're gigantic. And once they're up, they're generating energy all the time. By pursuing renewable energy, we're providing more jobs than jobs that are provided for oil and natural gas. And you and I both know that. That's a simple fact that anyone can look up. And again, as I said earlier, people should look up. Whatever I say, feel free to question it. Question everything, everybody that you hear about, that you're interested in. Get the facts for yourself. Don't just rely upon 1 or 2 sources. So that's my 2 cents. If I could make my 2000 BMW Z3 convertible fuel efficient, I would. Why shouldn't each of us, if we can, back in, I don't even remember the year, probably about 15, 20 years ago, they passed a law in Arizona that if you made your car electric, if you made it fuel efficient way back then, you were then allowed to drive in the carpool lane, and you got a $10,000 tax deduction. So many people signed up for that Arizona had to cut that program off because it was in danger of bankrupting them. But that's how popular it was. People wanted to be fuel efficient even 20 years ago. And in areas with high population, it must be done. We can't keep borrowing from our children's and our grandchildren's future. I saw a program today. I stopped by a friend's house, and her boys had this TV show on about the importance of turning climate change around. It's too late to turn it around. We now need to adapt or die. Adapt or die. And I realize that sounds harsh, but you're talking to an Indigenous person. As I'm speaking to another Indigenous person, we have to find solutions. How is our species going to continue? Because
have you seen in India? the recent smog and stuff there, it's like dark all day.
It's like
The pictures and stuff, like they got to wear the hospital mask and different things. They can't even.
Did you hear about China just passed a law that said that all cars will be electric? I think it's by 2025. 2020 or 2025. So it's quite soon in the long scheme of things. And if same thing, China's been going through days where people can't go outside. That's how it is in Phoenix sometimes. Kids who have asthma can't go outside. People whose health is compromised can't go outside.
In London, when I was doing the environmental stuff here last year, I said the biggest issue on the mayoral race was diesel fuel. And diesel fuel, now they're like, you got to pay a tax, a pollution tax in London. And they came out with this study. They said pollution kills 9 million a year. And that's more than wars. Yes. I did a video. I posted the video on my page. It's like a month or so ago, but it's a study that came out. 9 million people a year, more people than obesity, than wars, everything. It's basically the number one killer. And people are like pretending like it doesn't exist. So
yeah.
I don't know. And like how, I don't know if we talked about it before. It's like at some point, I think this could just be wishful thinking, but I just feel like the earth is going to protect herself through natural disasters. The worse we get with this, the worse natural disasters are going to get.
Yeah.
And
if you look at Oklahoma used to have about 5 earthquakes a year. Because of fracking, they now have over 20 a day.
A day?
Yeah. Google that for sure. So now they're putting over. I read that they passed a law that said if your home is damaged by earthquakes due to fracking, you're allowed to sue the fracking companies, which I think is fantastic. Way back when my son was, I believe he was in 6th grade, we were watching a TV program with Tim Allen on it. And in it, his TV wife played an engineer. And they were talking about fracking. And she's like, oh, it's perfectly safe. And my son looked at me and he said, Mom, how could that be safe? You're injecting the earth with chemicals that are not safe to drink. And then you're breaking up shale so you can release oil. And so you're disturbing the crust of the earth. How is that safe? That doesn't sound safe to me at all. And this is a little guy in 6th grade versus, folks proposing that we frack the heck out of our planet because we're running out of oil. They're not doing it. They're not fracking because it's easy to do. They're doing it because we're running out of oil. And right now, America is one of the biggest providers of oil in the world. I don't know if you knew about that, but we are because of the fracking and other methods. I'm really worried about the Environmental Protection Agency is being, as you know, dismantled as a result of 45 and his henchmen. I just wanted to say henchmen, really. And one of the reasons that Enbridge Energy Partners got in so much trouble was because of the EPA. The EPA said, whoa, look what you did here. This is a terrible thing, and we're going to charge you with all these violations. 545 violations in one state. 545. So the oversight that the EPA used to do is diminishing. The oversight rules are being dismantled, being done away with by 45 and his administration. So our country is literally under attack by our own elected official and the other people in office who don't seem to care for anything other than what can I get in my pocket while I'm here. I don't care about you. I don't care about yours. I don't care about your health care, your education. Don't care about your elders, your children. No, you shouldn't have. What's the other thing I read that they're trying to do away with? Maternity leave and childbirth. They're trying to take childbirth away as remove it as part of your health care, because it's an what do they call it? Elective. Childbirth is elective.
This country is very weird because
I'm telling you,
people come here and people want to, you know, people risk their lives from all over the world just to come here, you know, for the American dream or whatever. But we're so quote unquote economically wealthy, but our morals are like
bankrupt.
Like third world. Like if you could put morals in an economic sense, it would be like Yemen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But we have, it looked so great. Like how do we make bankrupt morals look so attractive? It's really weird.
Yeah, it totally baffles me that we would elect somebody's president, 1/3 of our country, right? So all the people who didn't vote, let's just put them aside. The people who did vote, like myself and yourself, and the 1/3 who voted for 45 voted against women and the safety of women, voted for a crude schoolyard bully. You know, who mocks a disabled person? Who tells other people, I'll pay your bills if you get arrested, beat that guy up, you know, get them out of here. He incited riots.
Oh yeah, if this was the 90s or something. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. A black guy gets punched in the face by a white guy. And who gets arrested? The black guy. I watched that happen. And I watched police officers take the black guy by the arms and carry him out of the building. And I thought, what has happened to our democracy? What has happened to our moral compass? Is it now a flexible moral compass? Because it sure acts like it. And friends and people that I know who claim to be Christian, where are you now? I got into a discussion with somebody yesterday. I said, because the thing that I hear all the time is, oh, you're just a liberal. Oh, you're just a liberal. So I posted back, are you a Christian? Because Jesus would have been a liberal. He fed the poor. He healed the sick. That sounds like a liberal.
And I'm not a liberal, but Jesus definitely would have said, he would not have said, lace yourself up by the bootstraps, suck it up. I had to work hard. You got to work hard. He would have helped you. Yeah.
And nobody, not one single person in America who's successful today,
did it on their own.
They did it on the bones of my ancestors. Mm-hmm. They did it on the bones of your ancestors. Mm-hmm. I had a professor in grad school who said to me, actually said to the whole class, he said, there's not a tunnel in Oregon that doesn't have the bones of Chinese laborers in their walls. Every time I drive through a tunnel in Oregon now, I get the chills. I cannot forget that phrase, but it's true. If you read the book, The Toledo Incident of 1924, it's a fantastic book, and it talks about Oregon.
My mother was born that year. Okay.
Oh, so Oregon was intended to be an all-white state. I don't know.
Yeah. When they had that thing with the I'm sorry to cut you off. That incident with the it was a couple years ago. Remember in Oregon, and the police had came. It wasn't the Bundy incident, but it was it was that incident in Oregon.
Yes.
They had mentioned, like, people were like, oh, well, Oregon, we wouldn't imagine this being racist. And they were like, no, like, Oregon was designed like this from the beginning to be all white, like the sundown towns, all that stuff. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's very true. What the Bundys did, and which I don't know if you followed the recent, what's happening recently, is so far they're getting away with all of it. I know. So if you or I were in a group of people who looked like us, if I was with well, look what they did to us at Wounded Knee. You know, look what they did to us at Standing Rock. But what did they do to armed protesters? Remember when they had the Tea Party and they were doing all those protests, and they would all show up with their rifles and sit around looking as manly as they could with their rifle because they had small penises? Sorry.
Let it, hey, vent. Let it out. Let it out.
I think the bigger the gun the guy carries, the smaller he must have been gifted by God. So that's just my theory. I'm not going to.
Okay.
Oh, come on.
If the truth comes out to you, you know, just speak it. Whatever you want to say.
Speak my truth. I speak my truth. So what happened at Standing Rock and what happened with the Tea Party? Diametrically opposed responses. Even that motorcycle gang down in Texas. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So all these motorcycle gang members who are known for their violence, they're all sitting around. Nobody's throwing them on the ground. Nobody's hitting them with a water cannon at below freezing temperatures. Nobody's shooting, what were those little projectiles?
Rubber bullets?
No, more than that. They shot rubber bullets, but they also shot these little containers with tear gas. Okay, so they shot those.
Spraying them with the water cannons in 40, 30 below, you know, not below, but, you know, freezing weather. Freezing.
Yeah, 17, I think it was 17 or 27 degrees. Anyway, they also shot these little tear gas canisters. And that's how that one girl got her arm shattered.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that? And they closed
they just showed her arm.
Yeah, they closed the highway so she couldn't get to the hospital. And they had to figure out another way to get her to the hospital. So that's your tax dollars at work right there. So in North Dakota, they were trying to pass a law making it okay to run over people who are in the road. Okay to run over people exercising their freedom of assembly and their
like in Charlottesville. That's what they really want to do.
Yeah. So we have to keep building alliances with one another, with our communities, with our as individuals and as communities. We have to stand together. Just like my friend Bruce posted online today, saying, you don't even know Renee. You don't need to be talking like this to her and being disrespectful to her. And, you know, all I said was, you know, our country is under attack from 45. And so I'm bringing this kind of back to the beginning of our conversation. But, you know, Bruce is an online friend of mine, but we are like-minded. And he is a Vietnam veteran and a person who fought in the 60s for civil rights. And while he's non-native and looks like your average white American, I no longer say average American because not only white people are Americans. I really get tired of that, what do you call it, stereotype being thrown out there. And I heard yesterday that come here. Sorry, my German Shepherd's barking. Good boy. I heard yesterday that there's a conspiracy theorist who says that the Vegas shooting didn't happen. My husband and I landed in Vegas the day after the shooting. I had friends that were there the day of the shooting. And I'll tell you, it was like walking into a scene on I Am
Haunted
Legend.
House or something.
Yeah, I Am Legend. Remember the streets were just
empty? Oh, yeah.
And that's how it was. It was surreal. When we got there, it was just surreal. I walked down the street. There was hardly anybody on the street. And if you've ever been to Vegas, it's always busy 24/7. And I walked
city that never sleeps.
Yeah. I walked into another casino and the whole huge, gigantic hallway. Nobody. I was the only person there. I took a picture of the hallway because I'd never seen it like that. And it was just eerie. And we could see Mandalay Bay from our balcony. And it was just, it was hard for everybody. and people were not out because people were afraid. And for someone to use their, I don't know, off their rockerness, to somebody to be that crazy, to diminish the deaths of all those people, to me is repugnant. It's like the people saying Sandy Hook never happened. How dare you? How dare you tell a parent their child didn't die? How dare you tell family members that their sister or brother who were teachers at those schools that was all a lie?
Do you remember the Facebook killer stuff? It was like in June of this year. A guy had killed an older man on Facebook Live. It was here in Cleveland. And he said, I've already killed about 10 other people. And like it went on CNN, and it was a manhunt for him for like 3 or 4 days. And they found him.
Was that the guy he killed the old man next walking by the fence?
Yes. Now that happened like 5 or 6 streets from where my family has lived since the 50s or 60s. I'm very familiar with the neighborhood. And we went to the scene. I interviewed the people that heard it. I interviewed the person whose house he left. I interviewed everyone almost on that half a street where it happened. I interviewed his children. There was a vigil and, balloons and everyone's crying and everything. Yeah. And I posted the videos and people are saying like conspiracy theory stuff. Like if you look how the blood came out, it should come out this way. And Steve Stevens, what kind of name is that? The guy who did the shooting, I actually used to work with him like 10 years ago. Yeah. When I was like, yeah. So I know that's his real name. It's a funny name. But I knew that was his real name. So these people are saying it didn't happen and it was a secret Illuminati. And I'm like, how are you arguing and telling me what happened? And I knew him at one point. Yeah. And I actually went there. Like, I'm a credible person. Yeah. And you're thousands of miles away online. And then people from the Cleveland area, they started just saying like, well, you're not even here. Like, how do you, it's like the internet has made it where people feel they can have any kind of opinion to, say this stuff. And it's really, because I'm a conspiracy person, or I'm open to it. I didn't think the Las Vegas stuff was a conspiracy, but I'll be open to listen to something if it makes sense. But like you in Las Vegas, like since I experienced something that people are calling a conspiracy, I'm like, oh, this is dangerous.
Yeah, it is very dangerous. So my battery is dying.
Oh, okay.
That's why looks like my photo just popped up.
Okay.
But I really appreciate the time that we're taking and would be happy to do this on a more regular basis if you'd like, because, there are issues that we need to get out there. And obviously we hit a lot of them tonight because there's a lot on my mind. So thank you for letting me do my adult attention deficit disorder with you.
No problem. And I just want to end it with some of the people are saying it's only a 20 to 30% chance that it'll actually go through with the pipeline. So that was in The Economist I read, if people want to look that up. So
yeah, I hope so. I hope it, because Nebraska doesn't sound like they want to pass it. But again, we didn't want Standing Rock, the Dakota Access Pipeline to go through, but 45 said, nope, it's going. And it's still in the courts because he didn't follow the permitting process. Nothing like, ignoring all laws and ignoring the Constitution to do whatever the heck you want. That's a dictatorship. That's not a democracy. So thank you.
Well, we'll definitely be in touch in December to see what happens with this process.
Okay. Great. Right. Let's do it.
Have a good night.
You too. Good night.